Okay, welcome everyone to the Planning Commission meeting of May 22nd, 2025. I'm just going to go through, before we get started on the public hearings, kind of the order of business that we do here. So first off, we'll have a staff presentation to go through the case. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to come up. And then I will open the public hearing, and any public can use up to 3 minutes to talk to commission and provide their comments. Then I'll close the public hearing and we'll deliberate and make a decision. Despite not seeing much public here today, if you do decide to make public comment, come up to the microphone and please state your name for the record. Address your comments to Planning Commission and not the audience, and refrain from clapping or booing or any of that kind of thing, please. And then finally, staff has provided draft resolutions for us to use as a guide with findings both for approval and denial. And so though we may be reading and using them, in no way has a decision been predetermined. And then another reminder that we are streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. All right, with that, we'll get back to the agenda. Any conflicts of interest today? All right, seeing none. Let's move forward with our first case, 221 Trowbridge Street Northeast.
The first item on the agenda is a request for a major amendment to an approved planned redevelopment district, or PRD, at 221 Trowbridge Street Northeast, with 3 items under consideration. The first being a request to convert existing interior space into 2 new dwelling units, converting part of the leasing office space into general office use, and an increase in the existing parking waiver associated with the parking required for these proposed uses. Some key considerations include neighborhood concern, if identified at the public hearing, whether the additional dwelling units in excess of the permitted density and general office use are appropriate with the existing TN-LDR neighborhood, potential impacts of the parking waiver for the proposed dwelling units and office use. This PRD was approved by the Planning Commission on February 13th, 2014, and later approved by City Commission on March 11th, 2014. This property lies within the boundaries of the Belknap ASP. The original PRD was approved subsequent to the adoption of this ASP. The surrounding zoning consists of TN-LDR, or low to medium density residential uses, to the north here and the east. And there are several high-density PRDs located adjacent to the development. to the south here, and to the west here, with one under construction here. The development incorporates the entire west side of Clancy between Trowbridge and Fairbanks, with the exception of this parcel here, which is the L&L Belknap Market properties, located at the corner of Fairbanks and Clancy. The site is improved with 4 residential buildings and a total of 66 dwelling units. All proposed changes are to occur in the southernmost building, shown here, at the corner of Clancy and Trowbridge. This is a 4-story courtyard building with currently 25 dwelling units. As you can see, there's a grade change present on site. So the first floor found here is at grade along Clancy, and then as you go towards the rear of the building, which you can kind of see it here, this is where one of the units will be converted or is proposed to be converted. So it's undergrade there. And then to the rear of the building, there is a second floor entry to the leasing office. And again, this is what the site looks like from Clancy and Trowbridge. The proposed project includes converting 2 non-residential spaces into dwelling units. The first is on the first floor, again, shown here in the rear and highlighted in the red section here. It will be converted into a 1-bedroom unit, and this will leave 2 remaining rooms for storage or possible community rooms. There is also a community room, shown here, on the 3rd floor that is proposed to be converted into a studio unit. It currently has a kitchenette and a bathroom. And with the addition of 2 new dwelling units, there will be 68 total units throughout the development, which will increase the density to approximately 51.9 dwelling units per acre, where 50.4 dwelling units per acre was originally approved. This density is most similar to that of the TNTCC zone district, where the density requirement is 750 square feet of lot area per unit. The second floor management office has a dedicated entrance at ground level, again shown here, at the rear of the building located off of the parking lot. A portion of the existing office, which was all previously here, with this red portion here being the new office that will potentially be converted and rented for general office use. The office is currently leased to a therapy practice called the Truism Center. With 2 new dwelling units and the general office space, 4 additional parking spaces are required. A total of 69 parking spaces will be provided. Therefore, an increase in the existing 39 space parking waiver to 43 parking spaces is requested. In reviewing a parking reduction, the Planning Commission shall consider the following following factors as applicable. Here, the parking occupancy heat map indicates that both Clancy, found here, and Trowbridge are both heavily occupied. In addition to on-site parking, there are approximately 21 spaces located along Clancy that are available to residents via permits. There are 43 parking spaces available to Trowbridge Flat residents at the adjacent gateway at Belknap Apartments, found here to the south. This is owned by an affiliate of the Trowbridge GR LCC. There are also a Rapid 11 bus route and bus stop located at the corner of Trowbridge and Lafayette. The Planning Commission should consider if the proposal meets the criteria to utilize on-street parking, transit, and other methods to waive the parking requirement by 43 spaces. The project was presented to the neighbors of Belknap Lookout, or Noble, Community Development Committee. Noble has since submitted a letter of support expressing that the development meets the spirit of the Belknap ASP by mixing uses without placing further burden on the neighborhood parking infrastructure. In summary, the applicant is seeking approval of a major amendment to an approved PRD to convert existing interior space into 2 new dwelling units, convert and add general office use, and a waiver of the required parking associated with the new dwelling units and office space uses. Are there any questions for me at this time?
Thanks, Avery. Any questions for Avery? No? All right, then we will invite the applicant up to add anything else.
Good afternoon. I do have a PowerPoint which maybe offers a teeny bit more information, but but Avery was quite thorough in her staff report. So again, hi, my name's Julie Sherhart. I'm a planner with Progressive Companies representing the applicant. I guess that I wanted to go through again just a bit of the history of the site and then get to maybe the current request. So as Avery mentioned, it was approved actually as Clancy Lofts back in 2014. It was rezoned to the Plan Redevelopment District. The developer worked with Noble at that time to develop an amenable plan. I believe it went for approval maybe in 2013 and it was denied at that time. So there was a lot of back and forth and it ultimately met the goals of the neighborhood, and so they offered a letter of support. So the current request, again, even though it's an addition of, I think percentage-wise, something that would maybe constitute like a minor deviation because it is a change in residential density, it requires a major amendment to the PRD, which is why it's before you, and then would go before City Commission should you approve. So again, these 2 additional units are proposed, and then formalizing an office use that has actually been in existence since the building was constructed. And even though it was not used just for management office, because it currently exists, it would not add, net stress, I would say, for the parking situation because it is already in existence. So these are the floor plans that you already saw. So again, conversion of 1 storage space on the first floor, community room on the 3rd floor, and then these office components on the 2nd floor, which is at grade when you're entering the building from the rear. I have a side-by-side here that just shows how it was proposed in 2014 and how it exists today. So, quite similar. And getting again into the parking waiver request. So this map just shows the location of Trowbridge Flats and then indicates where rapid stops are, as well as that gateway at Belknap, where there are approximately, I think, 39 or 40 in that area available spaces for use for tenants of Trowbridge Flats. And I have here just a picture of the bike storage that is available in Building 1. So they have plenty of space for folks that might want to, live in this building without having their own vehicle. So again, it is in compliance with the Belknap area specific plan with this mixed housing district, which allows for a variety of housing types, and is also in compliance with the new master plan. It's a compact neighborhood designation, which calls for a mix of housing types, small office, commercial, religious, et cetera. It's only 2 additional units, but it will help to meet the significant housing gap that the city is facing. And as Avery mentioned, we were able to meet with the Community Development Committee of Noble back in March, and they were supportive. Their questions really related to, there was some interest, like, could any of these units be affordable? And we kind of explained, like, that is something that would be more possible maybe at the conception of a project, but since this is converting 2 units that already exist, it's just not really part of the business model for this property. But apart from that, they felt that it meets the spirit of the area-specific plan, and, you know, it was a small enough increase in density that they weren't terribly concerned about the parking impacts. So that is all from me, and I could invite up Raji here. He's a representative from the management company, so he might be able to answer more questions about the current use of the building and kind of how this request came to be.
Awesome. Any questions for Julie? I have one.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Erin, if you want. Okay. I am just wondering about the arrangement with the Gateway property. Like, do people have to pay for that? How many are being currently utilized?
Yeah. Would you be able to answer that?
I can answer it in vague terms.
Well, come up to the microphone and,
We originally built the Belknap Gateway, and so that's been our project all along. And so what we did is we bought this property to try and create a little bit of economies of scale so that we could manage them together. And in terms of use of the parking, our parking structure isn't fully used. In terms of do they charge or not, I should know, but I don't honestly know. But the intent when we bought this property was to have them cross-utilize the parking. And our focus when we bought that originally, or when we built it originally, was to have enough parking there. So we made a big commitment with a ramp, which if you look at the other properties there, they did not. Not saying anything negative, but I'm just saying we were committed to trying to get parking there. We understand the importance of it. We're committed to the Belknap neighborhood. We kind of came in there early and before Grand Valley was there and stuff. So we're committed to making this neighborhood the nicest we can. We bring in a sister company that does high-speed telecommunications called Stellar Broadband also, and so they're servicing this and some of the other adjacent communities here, which may also help the neighborhood, not that that ties to that directly, and we're committed to Grand Rapids, and that's the gist of it. So Arena Place Stars and a few others down here.
awesome, thank you. All right, others?
Did that answer the question well enough, or?
Yeah, I think, I guess, a quick follow, so I understand you don't know if they charge for Gateway. Would a tenant have to pay extra for a parking permit at the current location?
At the current location, they usually get one, and if they need an additional one, then there was a cost for an additional parking spot
Okay.
typically, but I don't, it's not overutilized, let's put it that way.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
And I apologize, it just as the owner, sometimes I don't know exactly what my team's doing, and I should, but we have 10,000 apartments in
Sure.
greater Michigan area, so it's hard for me
That's
to
all right.
answer that directly.
Thanks. Okay, in that case, y'all can sit down. I'll open the public hearing. If anyone from the public would like to come up and speak, now's your chance to do so. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn to my fellow commissioners here. Their thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think I'm more or less in favor of an application like this, just a, relatively minor change in what's going on. I appreciate that the neighborhood was reached out to and seems to be supportive. I would say my only maybe disappointment is that we're here after some of the transformation has actually already happened without the appropriate steps being taken. So that's a little disappointing. But setting that aside, I can support this.
Same for me. Only concerns were about parking, but it sounds like, if I heard correctly, tenants are allowed one space. Those are not all being utilized, so there's not stress on parking. So if that's the case, then I feel comfortable approving.
I'm kind of in the same place. It seems like what they're requesting, they're already doing. So, yeah, I'm generally in favor of it.
Yeah, I tend to feel the same. I think 2 additional units and the conversion of some of the office space will have minimal impact on density and parking, and based on kind of Google Street View and overhead view, it does seem like there's a fair amount of private off-street parking available in the neighborhood for folks. But yeah, I guess I'm also glad to hear that folks can kind of freely use the Gateway property up to a certain point, and would just encourage folks to do that rather than gum up on-street parking. All right, would anyone like to make a motion?
I can make a motion. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Planning Commission recommends approval of the major amendment request of Trowbridge GR LLC, Ronald Uppel, to convert existing interior space into 2 new dwelling units and to use a leasing office for general office use with a parking waiver at 221 Trowbridge Street Southeast for the following reasons. 1, the proposed amendment will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including zoning district, because the proposed changes will support the intent of the Belknap Mixed Housing District to provide housing opportunities which address changing needs in different life stages while promoting neighborhood diversity, and the provision of a reduced number of parking spaces to support compact growth patterns aligns with the 2024 Community Master Plan. Balanced Mobility Recommendation 4.C.1. The proposed amendment will meet the site plan review standards of section 51208E because the conversion of the 2 dwelling units will take place inside the existing buildings, will not impede the normal and orderly development or improvement of surrounding property for permitted uses. The project will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and natural environment because the proposed changes will result in a density appropriate for this area of the neighborhood. As this development has already received approval for a density of 50.4 dwelling units per acre, and this will be increased by 3% with all changes taking place inside the existing building. The project will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because on-site vehicle parking is provided within an existing parking lot to the rear of the residential dwelling buildings, with approximately 21 on-street parking spaces along Clancy Street that are available to residents via permit parking. An indoor bicycle parking is provided for residents. A rapid bus stop is located in close proximity at the corner of Trowbridge and Lafayette. And I will add that the applicant has indicated that 43 spaces are available at the gateway of Belmont for tenants of this project as well. The project will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing future uses or to the public welfare by reason of excessive traffic, noise, or visual clutter because the intensity of the use is appropriate to its surroundings with access to street parking and public transportation. The project would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of a pedestrian-oriented environment because the conversion of dwelling units will take place internally and will not have any adverse effects on the neighborhood or urban street wall. Public or private infrastructure and services already exist and are adequate to support the proposed development, and the project would not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the increased density will encourage other investments in the area, and the increased density will help meet the demand for housing. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. Standard conditions set A, approval. 1, that the applicant and plans submitted by the applicant and signed, damped, and stated by the planning director shall constitute the approved plans except if plan elements do not meet ordinance requirements and or as amended in this resolution. 2, that the use shall operate according to the application and per applicant testimony as recorded in the Planning Commission minutes. 3, that this approval does not include any proposed signs. Any future signs shall be subject to the requirements of Article 15 of the ordinance and permits received prior to installation. 4, that a land use development services, LUDS permit, building permit, and all other required permits be obtained from the City of Grand Rapids prior to construction, demolition, or operation. 5, that any expansion of the approved special land use requires an additional special land use review and approval by the Planning Commission. 6, that the proposed use will comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all state laws. 7, that this approval should take effect 16 calendar days after the date of the Planning Commission's decision.
I have a motion, and I think we need to strike standard conditions set 5 and 7, since this is a recommendation to City Commission.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh.
otherwise?
Okay.
Do you,
Yeah, and 5 is for special land uses, and this is a
Yeah.
PRD. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
we have,
Yeah.
unfortunately, we neglected to cross it out in the resolution draft, but we have it up here on the screen that it's eliminated.
okay.
Okay.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have support?
Support.
Okay, motion and support. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. And we will move to our second case, which, Jen. 2284 Ball Avenue Northeast.
This next case is a request to establish an urban farming training center. New City Neighbors is a social service organization that provides youth employment and training opportunities that are agriculturally oriented. So this proposed use at 2284 Ball Avenue is considered an expansion of their existing social service facility. And social service facilities require special land use in residential zone districts. The subject property is located on the east side of Ball between Aberdeen and Knapp Streets. Surrounding zone districts are residential to the east, north and south, low density and mixed density. There's open space zone district to the west. And the uses surrounding the property, the property to the north is a former public school. Most recently, it was a church. The subject property actually was part of the school property and was recently split off of that property to help facilitate this project and future development on the property to the north. There's mixed residential densities to the east, and to the west is Huff Park. As you can see in this image, the subject property is undeveloped green space. It was the ball fields and the area of play for the kids who went to the school. The southernmost, about an acre and a half of the property is forested wetlands. In fact, the majority of the property, as you can see on this map, the property is behind all of the, where is it on this map?
Zone AE over, to
Oh,
the, yeah.
thank you, right here. It is in the floodplain. So the property is constrained because of the environmental area and the environmental constraints makes it difficult to, it would make typical residential development very challenging or possible, if at all. So that's what brings us here today. The property is approximately 5.5 acres. And it's difficult to see on this slide, but there is a sidewalk that is actually on the subject property along Ball Street. So you'll see in the prepared resolution that there's a suggestion for a condition of approval to require an easement with the property owner in the city of Grand Rapids to facilitate maintenance and any work that needs to be done on the public sidewalk that is on the private property. All of the development will take place on the northerly 4 acres of the site. There will be no development in the wetlands area on the south side. The operations, it's a farm. That's what's intended. And the project will be completed in 3 phases. The activities on the site, speaking about the uses, there will be training workshops open to the public, up to 2 fundraising events per year. And the farm activity will take place during normal business hours. and on Saturdays during market season, and any of the special events or training workshops would end by 9 p.m. 6 additional employees are anticipated with this use. So Phase 1 is intended to begin immediately, as soon as possible, and it will be the construction of the farm plots. It will also include installation of an 8-foot-high fence that will be constructed with 6-inch diameter wood posts and galvanized wire. The fence will be located around the farmed area, and it's proposed to be set back 8 feet from the public sidewalk along Ball Avenue, with native plantings in the buffer between the fence and the sidewalk. 8 feet galvanized wire fence is not typically permitted in the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission does have the latitude to allow for additional height and consideration of the fence material, given the agricultural use of this property. So that's under consideration for today, the height and the material. The fence is designed to prevent deer from going into the garden, which is understandable. Phase 1 also includes the construction or installation of 6 commercial hoop houses and a new 20-foot wide curb cut access off of Ball Avenue and a driveway to provide for interim parking until the parking lot is constructed, which is Phase 2, would be construction of the parking lot. Phase 3 is the last phase of the project, and that involves construction of the building. The building will be a total of 6,800 square feet. There are 3 distinct sections of the building. The section closest to Ball Avenue is the area of the building that will be occupied most by people. So it will have heat and air conditioning. It'll have, the restrooms will be in there, and that's intended to be used as the classroom. The middle section of the structure is intended to be used for storage of tools and machinery, and will also have coolers for vegetable storage. And then on the east side of the structure will be a 2,400 square foot greenhouse. So considering the site and building elements, the building is proposed to be set back 25 feet from the lot line, which meets the minimum setback requirement for non-residential buildings in the zone district. The building will exceed or meet the side and the rear setback requirements as well. Considering green space, 30% is required. This requirement will be met. If we talk about tree canopy, 48% tree canopy is required in the zone district. Because this is agricultural use, we can take a little bit of a different approach. This is not typical development. You know, that's agricultural use. The greens or the tree canopy is not being removed for buildings and structures. So it's suggested that that any trees that will be removed should be replaced, and that the street tree requirements along Ball Avenue be met. So we're asking the Planning Commission to consider this approach to the tree canopy requirement on the site, considering that this is agricultural use. Talking about the building now, for transparency requirements, the applicant is proposing windows on the classroom portion of the building only. There will be windows on the north, the west, and the south sides of that section of the building. Here's the elevation so you can see where the windows are proposed to be located on the building. The front and side transparency requirements will be met and only met on this portion of the building. The storage building is not intended to be occupied. It's intended for storage, and most of the activity that takes place within the building will be in this classroom section. So we're asking the Planning Commission to consider if the approach to meeting the transparency requirement on the section, the classroom section of the building closest to Ball Avenue is appropriate. The next consideration is the main entrance to the building. The entrances are, the zoning ordinance it requires entrances to be oriented on the side of the building facing the street or parallel to the street. The main entrance to this classroom is on the north side of the building facing the parking lot. You know, our alternative locations for entrances may be considered by the Planning Commission if it's consistent with that of existing development in the area or with practical considerations for the use and the site, the way way everything is oriented. You know, one possibility is to maintain this main entrance facing the parking lot and maybe add a porch structure on the side of the building facing Ball Avenue. The proposed materials, the ordinance says that walls that are visible from the public street shall be finished with high-quality, durable materials and may include metal with a high-quality finish. There are no concrete, this is a farm building, and the zoning ordinance, and this isn't a residential zone district, so it really falls out of directives of the zoning ordinance. So staff is suggesting that the portion of the building that is most visible from the street, it's board and batten siding. There's an example here. This is an example of what the finished building will look like. This would be what is most visible from the street. The remainder of the building is an agricultural building. It's intended for storage. And there is metal siding proposed. And we are asking the Planning Commission to consider the commercial requirements when metal is used on the side of the building, that it be a minimum of 24 gauge, and that be included if the Planning Commission is amenable to this siding, that be a condition of approval, that those commercial requirements are met. And the last thing we'll talk about is the parking requirement. Community center uses require of this size would require 8 parking spaces. The parking lot to be constructed will have 10 parking spaces, meeting the parking requirements. As I mentioned earlier, the parking lot is phase 2. The driveway and this area, paved area with 1 parking space will be installed in phase 1. And the building will be installed in phase 3. So in the interim, until the building is constructed and until the parking lot is constructed, staff will be shuttled from their Leonard Street location to this location, to and from, and this paved drive will be utilized for parking of that shuttle. Part of the request includes an 8-foot wide plant buffer north of the parking lot, and the Planning Commission should consider a condition requiring that the plants be wrapped around the parking lot to provide the required buffering between the parking lot and Ball Avenue. This plan was presented to the Creston Neighborhood Association. The association has provided a letter in support of the educational use and the positive impact to the community. So in sum, we are asking the Planning Commission to consider this request of an agricultural communities or social service use in a residential zone district, the appropriateness of the agricultural activities, the proposed building elements, including the orientation, transparency, and building materials, and whether the approach to the tree canopy requirement is appropriate. Does anybody have questions?
Thanks, Laura. Any questions for Laura? I just have one. Do you know how close we are on the canopy requirement?
I do not.
Okay.
I did not do the calculation.
Okay, thanks. Okay, seeing none, then I will invite the applicant up to add what you would like.
Good afternoon. My name is Ricardo Tavares. I am the Executive Director of New City Neighbors, and this is my colleague, Lance Cry, who is the Director of Operations for our organization. I'm just going to give a brief high-level view of our org. Lance holds most of the details as Director of Operations related to this project, so in a few moments I'll just invite him to speak. So our organization is, as mentioned, a nonprofit in the Creston neighborhood. We have been around since 2007, 2008, started as a kids club and became around 2011 a social enterprise-based nonprofit focused on urban agriculture. And so our mission statement is empowering youth to reach their full potential. Our vision statement is growing neighborhood leaders. And we use urban farming and farm-to-table food prep as a way to create employment opportunities for teens in our community and also early college-age students. Focus around these ideals, but also using them as opportunities to address issues such as food access, food equity, and economic disparity, and talk about equity and other related issues. So our urban farm provides about 20,000 pounds of produce every year to local food resource centers or food pantries, depending on how they're branded. And so this would be an opportunity for us to create more concentrated programming in our neighborhood while also maintaining the values of sustainability, maintaining green space in our community, which is a huge value in the Creston neighborhood. And so we are asking for support in this project for those reasons. And I will let Lance talk about more of our farm apprentice program and what working on this site will allow us to do and some of the details related to the project.
Great, it's good to be with y'all. I'll just try to add a little bit of the technical details of it and then a little more of the vision as well. I'm not sure if the commission is aware that the city of Grand Rapids was designated as one of 17 U.S. cities to be a urban ag center. So that was part of the last iteration of the Farm Bill and was really the work of Debbie Stabenow and her office. And so we're the only state to receive 2 of those, and Detroit is the other. And so this project is in alignment with that and is attempting to help facilitate the training grounds for hopefully what would be a pipeline of new urban ag producers for the city. And then as was presented, the property is quite unique. It is in a 100-year floodplain, which makes residential development extremely difficult. We have secured an Eagle permit based on all these drawings. So what we're proposing is in keeping with a 100-year floodplain. Largely, that just means we're going to have to elevate the building 3 feet above the existing floodplain. And so that's part of the entryway being faced to the parking lot is simply because the building would be elevated about 3 to 4 feet above the sidewalk. And so that ramp up to the parking lot will essentially grade up over that 30 feet from, I can't remember, 682 to 684. And so that's part of what's going on with that. The 8-foot high deer fence, if you visit this property at any evening, you will see people feeding the deer. And so basically every time we're on the property, deer do not run away. They approach us expecting to be fed. And so when we were making the property purchase, the first thing we did was speak to the planning department and say, if we're going to buy this, is this going to be a problem? And it seemed like an administrative departure would make sense. The fence will have the same aesthetic to the deer fence that Kids Food Basket has installed on Leonard Street, if anybody is familiar with that property. So there is a precedent for deer fences being installed within city limits, and it will be in keeping with that and be professionally installed. We are intending each phase to stand on its own. We are a small nonprofit, and so we do have funding already secured through MDARD and the David and Carol Van Andel Family Foundation to complete phase one, and are ready to start that as soon as we get the green light to do so and move through the permits after y'all. And then we're speaking with the Community Foundation presently for funding for the parking lot and architecturally rendered drawings. These are pretty conceptual at this point, but before we start spending money on rendered drawings, we wanted to move through this process first to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so that phase one and phase two align with any building. We didn't want to put something where we shouldn't have put it. And then we're having conversations with foundations right now for the building, and that will likely be something around 26, 27. We had some conversations around federal funding, and as you all know, that might be a little bit more precarious than it was when we originally started the process. But we do feel confident in local foundations that we already have existing relationships with and are having conversations with, that all three phases will be accomplished, but each phase will be able to stand on its own should that not be the case. I'm trying to see if there's any other major things that I feel like I need to highlight, but I think you did such a good job earlier that I think most of the details have been covered, and so I'll just leave room for any questions, and I can add details to anything that was missed.
Awesome, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Oh, and you asked about the tree canopy.
Yeah.
My guesstimation was somewhere around 30% because it's a 5.5 acre property in total. 1.5 is already wooded, and we won't be disturbing any trees there. We won't be disturbing any of the trees between the sidewalk and the street. There's 3 living trees and 1 dead tree where the parking lot is going to be, and I suspect 2 of them will come down and the 1 will be able to remain. But at maximum, we would be talking about 3 trees being taken down. And then there's, in that drawing, there's a bunch of circles. Mm-hmm. Those are existing trees, and we intentionally kind of put the parking lot up against those, so those would remain. And I think there was a suggestion, maybe by Elizabeth, of replacing those trees with apple trees along on some of the borders of the property, and we're completely comfortable with that.
Awesome. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
We estimate, our estimate of tree canopy is about the same, between 30 and 35%. And given the proposed use and really the inability to add a lot of trees to shade farmland, we thought that at least keeping the tree canopy where it is and not decreasing it at all might be reasonable.
Yeah, thank you. As far as the hoop houses go, and apologies, I'm not super familiar with these, do they use sunlight, or like do they open up to utilize sunlight, or are there going to be grow lights, just thinking about energy consumption?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a good picture of the hoop house. So these will be professionally installed commercial quality greenhouses. The end walls are in a material called polycarbonate, which is basically double layer thick plastic that's like hard and rigid. And then the sides and the top are actually a double layer of 6 mil greenhouse quality film that's then inflated in between for energy efficiency. And then they have roll-up sides. All 6 structures are actually passive, so there's no heat to grow in them. They're essentially, holding heat and allowing for season extension. And so it allows for year-round production of crops that can freeze thaw, like spinach or kale or those type of things. We wouldn't be using grow lights. There was not going to be any heat or anything along those lines. It's simply the greenhouse effect, so to speak. The actual greenhouse that's connected to the building would be heated, and so that would be where we're propagating plants. And so in March and April, we do heat those spaces, and that's to allow us to start crops like greenhouse, or like tomatoes and peppers, not for the purpose of growing them in that space, but to have all of our plant starts to then get transplanted out into the non-heated spaces when they're ready. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much. All right, any other questions? All right, I'll open up the public hearing. If anyone from the public would like to come speak, now is your chance. You got 3 minutes. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and turn to my fellow commissioners here.
I just want to say, grew up in Detroit, and in Detroit, as we all know, there are tons of abandoned houses. On every block, there's an abandoned house. And when those houses started to come down, we started to put farms there, farmland. And since I was little, we have always grown, tomatoes and cabbage and greens in our backyard. But then having these huge fields and open space where we could go, we could grow, and then we can trade was just something out of a movie to me. It was incredible. It also made me think farming is not my ministry. So I am very glad that there are people who are willing to farm, especially in urban centers. And not only that, to one of the points that the applicant made, those farms, that land provided food to people who could not afford to just go to the grocery store and get it. Fresh produce. So people who only have access to the kind of stuff, no shade, that you can only buy at Dollar General, where you couldn't get fresh produce, people in our neighborhood, while we were poor, we still had access to that. So I really appreciate what the applicant is doing, and I think it's vital, not only for our community now, but it's vital for those kids to be able to have this opportunity to learn how to do this. And there is just something about being able to grow your own food and being confident about what you're eating tonight. So I really appreciate that. And in general, I'm in favor of this. I think all of the plans line up to exactly what we're looking for, and I think this is a perfect location to be able to do this, especially because of the floodplain and all of that, and how difficult it is to build housing here. So I think this land could definitely be used to provide a benefit to the community, and I'm glad somebody's taking a look at it.
Anyone else?
I agree. I think specifically this street and this street in particular has a very rural feel to it. So to me, the variances being requested here to do farming activity on this site make a lot of sense because you have very natural areas all around, and so I think it feels right in this spot. So yeah, I'm in favor.
Yeah, I would support. It's a very creative and smart design for a difficult to develop space, and it looks pretty neat to me. So I'm in support.
I too am in support. I can't add anything else. I'm just really excited. I live on the northeast side. My son plays Little League across the way, so we are there often. So I can't wait to help chase the deer away for you. Good luck.
Yeah, I agree. Given that this property is in the floodplain, we can't develop residential here. This use seems appropriate. It seems like it's going to be a huge community asset. And yeah, whenever you go by here, there are deer. Even in the Google Street View photo, there are 12 deer in that. So I think the deviation to do the deer fence is completely appropriate, so that this property can be productive. So yeah, I'm in complete support as well. I'd be happy to hear a motion.
I'll do it.
All right.
I'll do it. Now therefore be it resolved that the Planning Commission approves the special land use and site plan review requests of New City Neighbors to establish an urban farming training center at 2284 Ball Avenue Northeast for the following reasons. The proposed use will be consistent with the purpose and intent of the master plan and zoning ordinance, including the zone district, because the use is aligned with the 2024 Community Master Plan recommendations 1.c.5 to improve accessibility to fresh food throughout the community, and 1.c C.6 to support community gardens. The permanent improvements associated with the use will be compatible with the desired characteristics of the built environment. The proposed use will meet the site plan review standards of Section 5.12.08.E because the development has been designed to meet all standards and requirements with modifications permitted by the zoning ordinance, and that improvements proposed will not impede the normal and orderly development of surrounding property, and existing vegetation and topography will be preserved to the maximum extent possible, and landscape screening will be installed to screen the property from surrounding property. The proposed use will be compatible, harmonious, and appropriate with the character and uses of the neighborhood, adjacent properties, and the natural environment because an underutilized parcel will be developed and utilized within the physical constraints on the property. The proposed use will not have adverse effects on the neighborhood because the site has been designed to minimize effects on neighboring properties by the provision of adequate parking, setbacks and buffers, and the placement of buildings. The proposed use will not be detrimental, hazardous, or disturbing to existing or future uses to the public welfare because considerations have been made to eliminate and or minimize impacts of the operations. Impacts of visual clutter will be minimized by landscape buffering and location of permanent structures on the site, and tools and materials will be stored indoors. The proposed use would not adversely affect the walkability of the neighborhood, impair pedestrian circulation patterns, disrupt the continuity of the urban street wall, or otherwise hinder the creation of pedestrian-oriented environment because the project can enhance the neighborhood's character with additional pedestrian activity, enhancing its walkable scale, and reinforces its sense of place with a strong street wall, and adequate connections to existing walkways and public sidewalks are proposed. The proposed development will retain as many natural features of the landscape as practicable because the existing wooded wetlands at the south side of the site will be retained. Adequate public or private infrastructure and services already exist or were provided by the applicant. The proposed use would not be detrimental to the financial stability and economic welfare of the city because the use will provide a productive use for a property that could not support other uses due to its environmental constraints. The proposed use would comply with all other applicable city ordinances and policies and all applicable state laws. Be it further resolved that the following conditions of approval shall apply to this project. The standard condition set A approvals on the screen. Number 2, the street trees be planted in compliance with the requirements of Section 5.11.13. That the parking lot be screened in compliance with Section 5.11.11. And that the amount of canopy removed for construction be replaced on the site. Number 5, that transparency requirements shall apply to the plus or minus 1,600 square foot front building only. That metal siding shall be at least 24 gauge in thickness with no visible fasteners. And that an easement be granted to the City of Grand Rapids for public sidewalk on the subject property. And that phasing shall be subject to Section 5.12.08H.
Support.
Okay, I have a motion and support. There was one thing that we did not discuss, and that was whether some sort of porch structure or treatment facing the street is appropriate in lieu of moving the main entrance of the building.
I think for me, because of the agricultural use and the 8 foot, I believe, native plant screening between the sidewalk and the fence, I'm comfortable with it as proposed.
Okay,
I would agree.
Same.
great. All right, I just wanted to make sure we covered it. All right, a motion and support. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we have now come to the portion of our agenda. So we have Planning Commission discussion, anything specifically there, but we did receive some communications, correspondence from Lisa Muller she came and provided public comment on the last case, so she wanted to formally submit her letter of opposition in our packet, so that was in our packet for us to review as well. And I would guess that that will be included in the packet that,
Yes, well,
when the case comes back, it'll be included as part of our materials too. Okay, I will open it up for public comment. Seeing no public, I will close public comment, and unless there's anything else, we stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.